So I started working with local bands. We worked with bigger and bigger bands, and kind of got a break being an opening act for Black Sabbath, and worked with other big bands, and I got talking to the sound companies. Now in the rock and roll business, there's a couple of levels. When you start out playing bars, you guys probably have bars around here where you still have the band set up behind chicken wire, like in the Blues Brothers movie. They have that kind of stuff down in the South. I'll bet you still have it, because I played in them. And we play those kinds of places. The band has its own sound equipment. You got your own truck to put it in and stuff. When you get to be a bigger band, you don't carry your own equipment. You hire a sound company. So when you go on tour, you hire this company to provide a sound system for you. You hire a lighting company to provide lights. Well, I started working for a sound company. The sound company I went to work for was called Britannia Row Audio, and they were owned by Pink Floyd. So we probably have some Pink Floyd fans in the audience, right? Just a few of you out there that remember that. And I became their American engineer. And I started fixing amplifiers, fixing crossovers, and building amplifiers, and building mixing consoles, and building special effects and stuff. And I did that pretty successfully. It was really one of the best times of my life, because I had gone from being a total reject of a kid to really finding a place where people accepted me and they liked me. I turned 21, riding a ferry to Newfoundland on tour with April Wine. They were a big Canadian band. They were like Rolling Stones of Canada, people told me, but nobody ever knew who they were here. And I played every hockey rink in northeastern Canada with April Wine that year. So that was kind of cool. Went all over there. We had a driver who used to work for Rolls-Royce, a total mad dog. You would think a Rolls-Royce driver would be like really tame and sedate. This guy got us arrested, running an old station wagon at 125 miles an hour on Transcanada Highway with a whole bunch of boxes in the back, and they're all stenciled Pink Floyd, London. We go through customs with that, and the customs guy looks at that, and he says, "What do you think, Pink Floyd back there?" And he says, "Right on, big boxes we do." The guy just looked at us like we were a bunch of drunk idiots and let us through. They still arrested us a few hours later. And before that, actually, my 20th birthday, spent that in jail down in Montserrat with another rock and roll band. You can read that story in the book. But despite all that, I was basically kind of happy, and I'd found my wife. And I was down there in New York one day. Boy, this thing makes a lot of weird noises. Anyway, I was down in New York one day, and I come into the studio. We had this big radio studio, bigger than this auditorium, where we would set sound systems up for tours. And the guys from Kiss are there. And I see Ace Frehley, the guitar player, digging at this Les Paul guitar with a chisel. Now, I may have been a freak, but I was a freak with the utmost respect for fine machinery. Whatever I did not vandalize guitars. So I go over to see what's the matter with him. This was as bad as those kids with blocks. I still had the eye poke. But it wasn't me. So I go over there to see what's the matter. And he tells me he wants to make this guitar smoke and blow fire. Well, I wanted to get him to stop damaging it, so I said, well, I can make it do that. And he says, really? He starts asking me about it. We start talking about it. And before I know it, he turns to his roadie and he says, Tex, have Gibson send this guy a guitar tomorrow. And sure enough, they send me a guitar. So I got to do something with it. I take it back to Massachusetts, where I was living. Now, I didn't have too many friends, but I made a couple of friends. One of them is this guy, Jim Bowden. Jim's down in your neck of the woods nowadays. He's building claymore mines in a military factory out in Arkansas. But this is before all that. He was just a garden variety, unemployed freak like me back then. And he loved making things out of metal, making stuff out of wood. He is very, very talented. Back when we were younger, he got into casting metal. Some of you probably did that when you were in high school. You would use this clay and sand mixture, and you'd make a mold, and you'd pour some metal into it. And when it dried, you'd maybe have an earring or something to bring home for your mother. A few of you probably did that kind of casting in high school. Fountain and me did that too, but we weren't like Gentle and Fuzzy making earrings for our mother. We looked around for stuff to cast and stuff to make it in, and Boughton got himself a big crucible about the size of a 55-gallon drum. And we went out and we got old automobile transmissions at the junkyard. We broke them up with sledgehammers. And he made a furnace by taking a propane tank for a mobile home and hooking it to one of those Craftsman shop vacuums to blow air. And he blew it into the bottom of this tube around that thing. And when you turned on the propane and turned on the vacuum, and you lit a big wad of newspaper and threw it in and stepped back, it blew the windows right out of the garage. And that thing could melt aluminum. So when we looked around for suitable things to cast, one day we're looking around and we spot Andy, his little brother. And we catch him. Andy's only about 10 at the time. And we bring him in and we stuff him into the mold. And we didn't want to kill him or anything, so we just had him arms and legs in. And we let him go, and we pour the metal, and what comes out are the most beautiful Andy arms and Andy legs. Hair, fingernails, and everything in this mottled gray former transmission metal. So we took those things, and we buried them in the front yard, reaching out of the ground. It was kind of an unsettling thing for trick-or-treaters to try back here. So that gives you an idea of the kind of person that Boughton was, and still is. So I bring the guitar up there, and he says, yeah, he's my kind of musician. So we made this guitar. We hollowed out the back, and we put a stainless steel box in there, and we lined it with asbestos, and we fitted it with a couple of aircraft landing lights, and we fitted it with 4 big smoke bombs. And that thing burned so hot it would burn the strings right off the guitar. And the first time Ace took that out and played at a concert, I was standing backstage, waiting to see what would happen. And he flips the knob. One of the volume control knobs had been modified to set it off. He turns the knob and you hear it snap. And smoke starts pouring out and the light shined all the way to the back of the hall. And the audience just went wild, and I realized the first time in my life they were applauding for this thing that I had created, and I was just so proud of myself. And I went on to make a whole bunch of guitars for him after that. I made several other of those smoking guitars. I made guitars that shot rockets, and we had guitars that shot lasers, and we had guitars that lit up and did disco patterns. So we just had one after the other of them. You can go on YouTube now and you can search for Ace's Kiss guitars. You can actually see videos of all these guitars I've made. It's kind of neat. It's one of the great things about the internet. They've been lost to sight from me and now they're back. So I did that for a while, and I decided that it was too hard a life. I was getting paranoid, and I was afraid, someone's going to like rob us or kill us out on the road. And I couldn't really deal with lots of people still. So I thought that I would get me a quiet job in a laboratory. So I come back, and to my great good luck, the Milton Bradley Company was only 20 miles away from me, and they were looking to hire engineers to design sound effects and toys. That's like right up my alley. So I go in there, and I was the only applicant who actually had experience designing sound effects. And the guy who was in charge of the electronics division, he had seen me on a 2020 thing on KISS. He hired me on the basis of that. And, so I describe life in the corporate world in my book there. You can kind of read, look me in the eye, and see what it was like to work in a big corporation. And